Hello, Maddie. Welcome to the R.A.W podcast. You're our first guest today, and thank you for the patience that you had when you first came in because we weren't quite ready to go. So
all good. I'm excited to be here.
Excited to have you. So I ask everyone the same question, the very first question. What does authenticity mean to you?
Being your real self, the person that God made you. Just not trying to change yourself at all for any person or situation that you're in. And just living your best life, being you and following God's plan.
Amazing. Amazing. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Dogs or cats?
Dogs.
Dogs.
For sure.
Okay, so you're a mom of two. You have a busy businesses. You also are responsible for bringing She Will Rise to London. And I know I said I didn't want to make this about business, but I do want to delve in a little bit about why you started She Will Rise and a little bit about what it is, because I think it's more than a business in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. She Will Rise is like a passion of mine. I've had this dream of putting a women's conference on for years and years and years. But we all know how expensive things like this can be. Just as, you run your own business, you know how much money everything can cost. And so that was something that was detouring me time and time again. But the whole vision was to just bring hundreds of women together in our community to learn more about God, his plan for us, and to be raw and real, and share our testimonies as to, what's happening in our life but how God can redeem us. And I think that I was so scared to start it because I was scared of the money aspect of losing money. And God just kept telling me, you know what, you got to take the first step. You're never going to have, $50,000 to put an event on like this. You have to take the first step and I'll provide for you as we go. And it really was exactly that. I took the first step and I reached out to a couple women to be on my team, essentially, and we just started pulling things together left, right, and center. And the money came as we would go. Sometimes the money wouldn't come until after, but it was something that I had to do to trust God. And in the very end, he did pull through, and it was all paid for. The money came as it needed, and it ended up being a successful day. We've had the event 2 years in a row now, so it's been great. It's been life-changing for me, and it's been life-changing for other women as well.
So question for you, has God and your faith always been in your life? Like when?
Yes, but not to this extent. Like I've always been a Christian. I've always been a believer. I grew up in a household where we were all baptized Catholic, and grandparents all went to church, all that kind of stuff. But it wasn't embedded into me that like you need to trust the Lord. It wasn't until I started doing my own things in my own life and realizing that God truly does want the best for me and has my back in everything I do. And so it was when I started the conference when I really was almost testing my faith myself, being like, okay, I feel as if God is calling me to do this, but is it God or is it just my own voice in my head telling like, I want to have a business, I want to have a women's conference, or is that God calling me? I'm like, this is going to be the true test. And listening to him each step along the way. I mean, it's not easy to go put on an event that's, costs $50,000 when you make your living paycheck to paycheck, right? I don't have an extra $50,000 to put an event on like this. So it truly did, test me in my faith of saying, okay, I got to trust God that I'm going to put this deposit down for blank speaker for, $15,000, and in hopes that he's going to bring the people and pay the tickets and we can pay the rest of it.
Always just has a way of working out, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
So I'm going to delve in a little deep. I hope you're ready for these questions.
Sure.
You've had a trying year. Mm-hmm. You've had a lot happen, and the reason I want to ask you these questions is not to expose you in any way, but in hopes that we can actually help people that are watching or listening. You've had a lot that you've gone through, and I'm going to let you kind of talk about your raw moment if you're okay with it.
Yeah,
and,
of course.
Yeah.
So this past year, just in April, my dad took his own life. We knew that my dad had struggled with mental illness for many years. I've watched it growing up. He has bipolar, so he suffers with major manic depression. So he'll have these episodes where he's super manic. He'll spend a lot of money, do a lot of things, be go, work, 15 hours a day, come home, crash for 5 hours, get back up, do it all over again. And this would last for months. And then there would come a time where something would trigger, whether it be COVID, triggered at one time. A motorcycle accident triggered another. And it seems that something triggers and he would fall into this depression. Sorry, I should have turned that off the vibrate. He would fall into this depression, and it would usually last for anywhere from 3-4 months, sometimes longer, which then he would seek out lots of help and would come back up, and he would be okay. And he'd be okay for usually 2-ish years, and he'd be fine. And then we'd start to see him go manic again. And, you know, this is the terrible thing about a disease like bipolar. It's inevitable that it's going to keep happening. And when you get out of that depression, you think, finally, like, we're good for a little bit. And just this last January, he was going manic again. And it seemed that it happened very quickly, because back in July, he was in a depression. And usually we'd get a few years in between the manic stages. But this time it started to happen really fast. We'd see him becoming manic again. And my mom and I were saying, you know, we better keep an eye, just make sure we're watching him. And that's what we would typically do in situations like this. But you always think, before my dad had taken his life, I always think when people had said someone had killed themselves in their life, I thought, well, if you knew they were suicidal, why wouldn't you watch them all the time? Why wouldn't you keep them home? Why wouldn't you say, no, I'm following you, or, you know, someone has to be by their side? But when it comes down to it, you can't. Like, if it's lasting years, like, you have a life, you have to get to work, you have to pay your bills, you have kids, you know, there's things to do. And so we would know, okay, he's in a suicidal state right now, but you have to let him walk out that door and go to work, and in hopes that nothing bad happens. You can't follow him. And, you know, you can call him on the way and say, oh, did you get to work okay? Everything fine? But still, when it's on their mind, it's like the enemy is taking them, you know what I mean? And you pray and you pray and you pray that God will just hold them a little bit longer. But I feel like sometimes, and it's sad to say, but with bipolar, they say the statistics are really high, that it's not a matter of when, or it's not a matter of if they'll kill themselves, it's a matter of when they'll kill themselves. And so knowing that, it's very sad, just looking at them, thinking, it's almost like your brain is already grieving the process, like you already know it's going to come. And so that morning, it was a Thursday morning, just like any other. I remember my daughter was sick, my 4-year-old, and I said, you have to come to work with me today. And my dad even said, do you want me to take her to work with me? Like, she can come hang out with Papa for the day. And my dad was the best dad, the best Papa. Like, he was active in our life in every single way. We were with each other every weekend, Sunday dinners, at the beach every weekend. Like, he was very involved parent. Growing up, even though he had this disorder, I never knew when I was younger. Like, he made us feel like the most loved kids in the entire world. And so I said, nope, it's okay. I can bring her to work with me today. Don't worry. And he's like, okay, sounds good. And then he FaceTimed us in the morning. The kids were getting ready for school. And I remember just kind of coming behind the camera like, morning, Dad. Okay, we got to go. Bus is coming. Let's go, kids. Say bye to Papa. Okay, bye, Papa. Love you. Have a great day. And my mom had sent him off with a lunch that day. He said, pack me a lunch. I'm working out of town today, so I want to have my lunch in the car with me. And that was the last time I talked to him. The last time I saw him was at church. A couple days before that, I hugged him in the atrium of the church. He hugged me and he said, I love you so much. Sorry that I'm acting so weird lately. And I said, don't worry, Dad, it's all good. We're going to get through it just like we always do. And that was last time I hugged him. And that Thursday morning I got to work, and it wasn't even just past 9 a.m. My first client walked through the door and I said, good morning. And then my phone rang and I saw that it was my dad's receptionist. And I knew right then and there. She never calls me. I answered the phone and I said, what happened? She said, it's not good. And I just said, tell me, how did he do it? And she said, he hung himself. And she said, but the paramedics got a heartbeat back. And I instantly was like, praise Jesus. He's going to be okay. Like, it's going to be fine. Don't worry. And so I told my client, like, I just need a minute. I think my dad just tried to take his own life. And she's like, okay, it's okay, it's okay. And I remember thinking, it's okay, they got a heartbeat back, he's going to be fine. And so I actually took like 4 more clients after that. Like, they came through the door and I was like, okay, he's going to be fine. Don't worry, don't worry. My daughter was in the back playing. My mom called and she's like, I'm coming to your work right now and we'll go together to the hospital to see what's going on. Thinking that, okay, he's going to be fine. And we had got there and the doctors had said that he was out unconscious for about 30, maybe 35 minutes. And the chances of him having any brain activity was very low. So we sat in the hospital and prayed for 2 weeks when everyone had told us just let go, just let go, just let go. But we were praying for a miracle. And unfortunately, we didn't get the miracle that we hoped for, and we had to say goodbye to my dad on April 5th. So it was very tragic and very sad. But I do believe that God gave us that 2 weeks to really say our goodbyes, to really pray, and to really just, we got to hold his hand. He was still warm. We got to see him. We got to hug him and kiss him. And they say that even though, they're not talking, they can hear you still. And that gave my kids a chance to come and say bye to Papa as well. Like, they came in and they held his hand and they told him stories, and they wrote him like little letters and stuff. And I just thought that was super beautiful. And at the end, they were like, "Well, see you later, Papa. Like, have a good day."
And how are they doing now? Like,
they're okay. I find my oldest one is struggling a little bit with anxiety. She's 7. And I think we did not tell her what happened. We just said Papa fell at work and he hit his head. And that sometimes when you hit your head really hard, this can happen.
Right.
And so now she's always concerned about
falling.
people falling. And she's like, always be careful. You don't hit your head, or you have to be careful of this or that. And I'm like, it's okay, baby, don't worry. And she's like, well, it happened to Papa and it's so fast. So she's struggling a lot. But my youngest, she just is,
Okay.
she remembers him completely. But we always say whenever you see like a dime on the ground, that's Papa. He put it there to let you know. So she sees toonies, loonies. That's Papa. He's here. He's here. So it's kind of nice. But
So, question for you: during this whole process, did you ever question faith? Did you ever get mad at God, or like what?
I never questioned my faith. I never questioned like how powerful and how good God was. But I did question the whys. Like, why are you taking him now? He was in a motorcycle accident a year prior. And I just thought, like, why couldn't you just take him then? You know what I mean? Not that it would have been any less sad. My sister and I talk about this. Like, if you would have died of a heart attack, motorcycle accident, would we be just as sad? Of course, we're losing our dad. But it felt like the way it went down is that he could be here still. If he didn't do it, he'd be here still. Versus if he would have passed away in that motorcycle accident, it almost feel like, all right, he went off doing what he loved,
Right.
just riding into the wind, and he smacked a deer, and that was the end. And like, that sounds really like weird.
No.
But like, it just feels like it wouldn't have been as sad. And so the whole time I did question why. But I knew that God had a plan for it. And I still, those plans are unraveling, and I don't know what they are, but I do know that within that 2 weeks of being in the hospital, my faith grew immensely. We watched one of my dad's friends be saved right in the hospital room, right beside his
Oh
bed.
yeah, you shared that with me, which is amazing.
And I thought, you know what? Even if his death brought one person home, I mean, all of heaven is cheering.
Right.
Like, at the end of the day, I like to see it as heaven is a vacation. Like, we're getting there. It's beautiful. It's everything you could ever imagine. There's no, it's all peace, no hurt, no, like, no pain. You get there and you're just free. It's like a load is taken off. And then they're excited for you to get there too when the time comes.
Have you changed? Do you think you've changed since your dad's passing?
Definitely. Yeah. I just feel like my whole mindset is like, heaven is the goal. Heaven is the goal. None of this matters. Well, it does matter. Like, what God did want us here for a reason. We're here to spread God's word. We're here to love one another. It's just as simple as following the 10 commandments. Like, it's something we learn when we're, in JKSK, but it's something as simple as that. Just loving one another, loving your neighbor as yourself, and just doing your best. But at the end of the day, it's heaven, and that's where we're going. So
What do you miss most about your dad?
his laugh.
His laugh.
Yeah, he was a jokester. Even if he was in a depression, he will make you laugh. And when he's manic, I know it's sometimes he would be a little bit crazy, but that is when he was his most fun person, because he was just like, let's do this. Let's have a party. Let's invite these people over. Let's invite them to church. Let's do this. Let's do that. Like, he always wanted to have people over, have big dinners, have big lunches. And yeah, so just his life of the party.
I remember your father sitting in front of me at church, and he was the one guy that always had his hands up. And I thought, this man is just full of life. And I had no idea it was your dad.
Yeah.
In the beginning, I'd see you once in a while there, but your dad was always there every Sunday. And he was just, he just had so much life in him, right? So when I heard, I was like, wow, like that's where we're so quick. There's some Kleenex behind you if you need. it's interesting, right? We look at people and we base things from the outer shell and we like, oh, they're so happy. Their life is all together. And I really try to preach, even on the Raw podcast and channels, that just because people are happy, like still check in.
Yeah.
Sometimes the happiest people are actually the saddest people.
It's so true.
Right?
That is something I've learned along this journey, doing a lot of research about bipolar and just mental illness in general. And I think it's so important to know that. Like,
Yeah.
the most happy people are usually the ones that are suffering the most.
100%.
My goodness, I'm just gonna put this over
Don't
here
worry
because
about it.
Just keeps
We're just being
the
raw.
vibrating. But
My
yeah.
best friend, I'm sure she won't mind because she's been on the podcast, but she suffers with bipolar, major PTSD, and she just landed in the hospital. She was there for 30 days because her meds all stopped working. So they're trying to put a new mix on, and even though she is going through so much, she still is such an advocate for mental illness. She was like making videos from the hospital. And I think when you get to have an insight inside of someone that's actually suffering, you look at it and she's so talented. She's good at everything. But when she's in her manic state, it's like a lot of people, like a lot of friends come and go because nobody wants to kind of put up with it or deal with it, which is so sad because they're so loving. They're no different than us. It's unfortunate, right? So
It's a real disease.
It is a real disease.
The doctor explained it like they're sick, just like someone's sick with cancer. It eats away at their body and essentially their brain.
Right.
And yeah, they can't help it. So it's heartbreaking.
Thank you for sharing that. I feel like you're going to help so many people that are listening but I want to know a little bit more about you. Like, I know that that's a raw moment, but would you say that's like been the rawest moment in your life, something that's been life changing for you?
Definitely. Like, I mean, as far as my own life, it's funny. I feel like a lot of my testimony has so much to do with my dad, just because growing up with him, that's like, he helped, create me the person that I am.
Right.
And so for me, myself, I find that a lot of it is intertwined and a lot of it is attached. Him and my mom were amazing parents, and they, made me who I am. And obviously God also made me who I am. And I just find that ever since I've been so active in my Christian faith, like, yes, I was a believer before, but ever since I stepped out and tried to glorify the kingdom, per se, that's when I feel like Satan is really trying to interfere with my life.
Right.
And some people would say, well, why would you go through it then? Why would you go through and try to create a women's conference to glorify God, or, have these Bible studies to glorify God, if all you're doing is creating more strife for yourself, because Satan is just digging into your life more and more. And I felt like that's exactly what it feels like. 4 weeks before the last event, my dad was in a motorcycle accident. 4 weeks before this event, my dad took his own life. I run a business, and about a month and a half ago, there was a fire in my salon.
Yes, I just saw that. Like,
yeah.
Wow.
There's a fire, and, now I'm like, okay, I don't have my salon to work from. I have to go work somewhere else. And I just feel like you're trying to be a good person. You're trying to do good things, but the enemy is kicking back at you every single day. But I'm a firm believer that what he is doing for bad, God is going to use for good.
Right.
So silver
But
linings.
sometimes that's hard, isn't it? What's the saying, when two or more are gathered, that the enemy can't enter? But I feel like, I don't know if I believe that. I feel like it's the opposite. The more people that are gathered and the more you're trying to preach the good word, I think you get attacked a lot more.
I think so too. Yeah. And he will taunt you, and he will do so much to your mind. It's really hard to stay above and keep your head above water and just think, okay, no, it's fine. I'm going to keep glorifying God because it's worth it. It's worth him. He is worth it. And, I'm going to keep pushing.
So I have a question for you in the sense of, when you are preaching God and you're so strong in your faith, have you lost a lot of friends along the way? And being someone young, and because I'm finding, because I grew up in a completely different faith, and now going to church and kind of slowly starting to talk about it, I find every time I post something and I put like a more Christian song on, I'll lose a bunch of followers. And it's like, that used to bother me a lot in the beginning. And now I'm like, this is who I am. And if you are going to be offended that I'm speaking God into my life or your life, I won't preach and push it on you. I'll just continue to be the best version of me. And
Exactly.
so I'm just wondering, like being younger, do you struggle with that?
I don't think that I like necessarily lost friends, but I can tell that some of my friends might be like uncomfortable talking about it. Like if I say something funny, like my dad always used to joke about this, so I'll say it sometimes when I'm like, "Hey, you guys should come to church with us on Sunday," and they're like, "No, it's not really our thing," and I'm like, "Oh, you don't want to go to heaven?" Or like just like little jokes like that, and I can tell that they like don't think it's funny.
Right.
And I'm like, I was just joking, like, yeah, sure, maybe you'll go to heaven, okay? But like, just little things like that. But I don't think I'd lost friends. I can tell that there's people who aren't interested. I mean, I have a big group of friends from when I was in high school, and more than 90% of them do not come to the women's conference. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I see a lot of them, and they just say, "Oh, how's the women's conference?" or "How's the planning coming?" And I won't see their names come up on the tickets. You know what I mean? So I'm like, obviously they're not interested, but that's okay. Like you just said, it doesn't phase me anymore. It used to, because I'm a people pleaser, so I
Right.
wanted to be like, "You guys should all come. It's gonna be so much fun. Like you should know God." But I think that's also why people feel like Christians can be culty, because we're so pushy. But
Right.
we're not pushy because we're trying to be bad. We're
Right,
pushy
you just
because
want
we're
everyone to
like,
have the feeling.
the goodness of God is so awesome. And
Right.
like, so I think that's where it stems from a lot. It's just being like excited that God has done such great things. Bad things can happen in your life, but God is still good and can do awesome things.
Right.
So I try not to be pushy about it, but
So
I just get excited.
you just,
So
always,
but-
you're always excited.
yeah, but being someone who's young, I think it is difficult. Or wearing a cross necklace, you know what I mean? And you're having an interaction with someone and they glance at it and you're just kind of like, yeah, I'm repping it. I'm good. I'm happy.
But don't you find, I'm finding more and more younger people are starting, like it's almost like it's trendy now for the
Yes.
young people to be at all these Christian concerts and all
Yeah.
that. So it's it's fascinating.
It is.
I feel like youth are coming in a little bit more awake.
I like it. The
Yeah.
States are really big. Like I went to not a women's conference, just like a conference in general. And it was all for college students. I wasn't in college, but I really wanted to go.
Right.
And it was incredible. Like 50,000 or so college students all have their Bibles. They're sitting there praising. It was amazing. So
Do you find that I find it's more accepted nowadays to talk about it? Because remember
yes.
back in the day, you'd be almost afraid to like let your cross out or whatever
Yeah.
it may be. Like people were
Yeah.
just so afraid of chatting about it.
Yeah.
So,
Now I'm like, you know what? Doesn't matter. Like I said, the goal's heaven.
Right.
You know what I mean? I don't care if I'm offending you along the way. God's got my back, and that's the end of it.
so because you are openly, you openly speak about your faith and you do this women's conference, do you feel like you're a little bit under the microscope? Because I'm sure you still go out and have fun with your friends and
Yeah.
you might have a drink or, you know what I mean? But do you
Yeah.
feel like you have to be this perfect person?
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, a lot of the time, I feel like when I did the conference the first time, I didn't think about it too much until people started messaging me and being like, "That was amazing," yada yada yada, or asking me for advice. I'm like, I don't have advice at all. Like,
Right.
And then as the second one approached, I'm like, I gotta go clear my Facebook up a little bit, like from my high school photos. And so I went and like took them all off. I was like, people could see these. Like, so I took all those off in my Instagram photos, deleted them. It was like,
You're
yeah,
feeling like you might be judged?
yeah. And I know that's like not what I should be doing because it's like my authentic self, but I also feel like it was a past version of me from when I was younger and I have changed a lot. I really should delete them, but I feel like Facebook, it's also memories. I want to keep those memories. and
Yeah,
I
but
don't
it's
know how to
also
take
an
them off.
evolution of where you
were.
came from and what brought you to where you are. So
Exactly.
I actually agree or I disagree with you.
Yeah.
I think you should leave them up there because
I
if
know,
people are
but-
looking through that, it's just like it makes you more authentic. It makes you more
true.
real, right? And then we
Yeah.
can relate because then you might find someone that might be at that stage of their life. But I honestly get it because with the parenting magazine, I will never forget this. I was in a grocery store with my husband at the time and we had our little baby in the cart and I was hormonal and I'm like, said something, I'm like, the effing apples are right there. And someone comes in between us and says, Sabina, I love your magazine.
Oh my gosh.
And I felt like such a fraud. I felt like I was like the worst parent because here I am running a magazine for parenting, but yet I'm sitting here swearing in front of my kid. So
Yeah.
But it
I
just makes us
know.
human, right?
Yeah,
So,
it is. And we all slip, and
Yeah.
I am bad. I do have a little bit of a potty mouth, so that is something that I am working on and pray for that the Holy Spirit takes my tongue and fixes that one for me. But
I've got a big potty mouth. So the whole joke was when I had Pastor Rob on here, the question was, is Sabina going to swear? And
yeah,
of course I did. Of course
That's
I
so
did.
funny.
And it's like, again,
Yeah.
if you're judging me because I'm using a bad word, then come on. Like,
I mean, most
seriously.
people who walk to church into church are, we're the biggest sinners. That's why we're there.
Yes.
So if you think that you're looking at church and you're like, oh, those people think they're so like, snobby and they think they're so good because they're going to church, it's not that.
Well, I struggled with that because I thought, oh, if you go to church, you got to be a good person. You're not going to screw me over.
Yeah.
But
No,
no, we're still human.
we're all
right?
human in there.
Yeah.
We're all just learning. We're
So-
there to find God. So
Tell me your biggest, I'm going to switch gears a little
Yeah.
bit. Your biggest parenting fail.
Oh, biggest parenting fail. I think I yell too much, or I'm like quick to yell. Yeah. So it's not like one specific situation. But when my kids are acting out or they are getting frustrated, instead of I'm not a good gentle parent,
Yeah.
I'm like,
I mean,
no, sit that. Just kidding. I don't say it to them. But I am. I'm literally like, get down right now or shubba, spanking. And they're like, oh, not the shubba.
not the
Okay.
shubba. I love
So they're
it.
good. So that would be it. I definitely am trying to work on that. I'm not for gentle parenting. I think that we need to, be firm and they need to be a little fearful of us.
Right.
But I do need to tone it down just slightly in the sense that like I don't need to raise my voice so much. So that's a big parenting fail. But yeah.
And a parenting win.
Parenting win, I feel like I love on my kids a lot. Like that is just every morning we want to cuddle for like 35, 40 minutes. I'm like, I gotta make lunches. I gotta do stuff. They're like, no, keep cuddling, mommy. Like they're big on to just being with mom and dad. We just try to like pour so much love into them and give them so much. And yeah, all while trying to balance it though. I think kids sports nowadays also have
Yeah.
almost like a downfall. Like there's too much. They're asking for too much from kids that are so young. And so I want to get them involved in sports and I want them to be active and on a team, yet I don't want to be there like 5 days a week at like, gymnastics or hockey or what my kids don't play hockey, but just an example, right? I
Right.
try to have that balance so we can still have meals at home and be around the dinner table asking the kids how their day were. So we really try to put family, God first, family, and then
Nice.
work and school after.
Okay. You're married to a police officer. Correct?
Yes, I am.
Tell me a little bit about that. Is it hard?
No. It used to be. We live in Strathroy, and he used to work in Waterloo. So that was really difficult. Hour and a half drive, 12-hour shifts, hour and a half home. It was like I was a single parent for a while. So that was really difficult. Waterloo was really dangerous, not knowing what was going on. And just seeing things on the news and being like, were you there? Were you know what I mean?
Right.
Now he is working in Strathroy, 2 minutes from home. So I'm a lot less scared. Strathroy is a lot safer. So I don't find it that difficult. He comes home, say hi to me once, sometimes during his shift. And the thing I find hard is he works with a lot of people who are not Christian. And so we are Christian. And once again, you don't want to be pushy, but I always say like, oh, you should tell your friends to come to church. He's like, no, I'm not doing that. No. And I'm just like, okay, fine. That's all right. But, we hang out with a lot of people who are not Christian.
Right.
And it depends where you look. Some people say, you shouldn't. And then
Right.
some people say, well, aren't you trying to like bring more people in? I don't know.
I feel like it all happens the way it's supposed to.
I agree.
We're going to start wrapping up, but I want you to take a moment and if you could, well, I'm going to ask you 2 questions actually, and I already feel like I know the answer, but if you could bring everyone that you have ever met in your whole life together, dead, alive, and you could only look for one person, who would you look for and why?
Bring them all together like in a room.
Yeah. If they're all here in this room and you could only go to one, who would you go to and why?
Oh, my mom. I'd go to my mom. She is just someone who is so important to me. My husband and my children are the biggest people in my life. But my mom, she's been with me since day one. Of course, she gave birth to me. She, has formed me into the woman that I am, and growing up the way that we did. And there's so much more to that story of how we grew up and with my dad being manic depressant. My parents had split many times. He was in and out of prison throughout my childhood, which is also a whole other story, but she remained constant through it all. She was the person that was always driving me to cheer practice. She would let me cuddle in her room with her. She would just be that person that was always there for me. Even when, not saying my dad was not there for me, but when he was in prison, obviously he couldn't physically be there for me. But my mom was always, always, always that person that was constant in my life. And she never failed me. And she let me go on the path that I wanted to go on without being too strict or whatnot. And when I had even gotten pregnant before marriage, I was scared. I was terrified. Like, what are my parents going to think? And the first thing that she said was, "Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Like, I can't wait, honey." She's just been there.
Just
so she's
very supportive.
Yeah, my best friend. So.
Because you brought something up, I know I'm going to go over, Beth, but just bear with me. Were you angry when your dad, like, have you ever been mad at your dad for taking his own life when he was in prison, like you just said? Like,
definitely. Before I knew really what bipolar was and studied it a little bit more, I was definitely, because I don't understand how you can love someone so much but leave them. And he used to say, when he was in his states where he wasn't manic, he would say, like, "Oh my gosh, honey, I can't believe that I even thought about having suicidal thoughts. Do not let me ever think that again. Like, don't let me go down that path. Fight for me. Whatever you do, fight for me." And
was that pressure for you being a young girl, like that you had to almost be the parent?
Well, yeah, like, and my brother and sister struggled with it a lot too. And when my dad came out of prison, he lived in a halfway house, which was near my brother's university home, and which was in Windsor. And then when he got out of the halfway house, he had to go somewhere. He wasn't allowed to come back to London. So my brother said, "Well, you can come live in my university house with me and all the boys."
Wow.
And so he went there. But my brother had this responsibility of him of like curfews, make sure he's eating, make sure he's going to work on time. So it was, my brother had said that at the funeral, actually. It felt like he was his father's father.
Right.
He was taking care of him. So when I actually, delved into what bipolar was, I thought, I can't be mad at him. It's literally a disease. And however much he said, "I love you guys and I want to be here for Harper and Penny, my girls. I want to see them get married. I want to see them grow up. I want to be the best papa." And then you go and you do that. It's like, how did you just say that and then you did that? Like, it doesn't make sense. But when you go back to the brain is a really messed up thing. And
It is.
and I feel like the enemy can taunt you a lot. 1 weak moment by yourself and you're gone.
Yeah.
So
I'm going to get you to look right in the camera and give one piece of advice for someone that might be going through something similar.
sure.
To you.
Yeah. Okay. If you are struggling with mental illness, I would just like to say, please reach out to someone. Our system can fail you. I've seen it happen multiple times. And so just reach out to anyone who will listen. There are people who love you. As much as you might think that everyone is against you and that you may be a burden on them or you may be bugging them, you're not bugging them. Your life is so much more important than work or than finances or anything like that. So please, you are not a burden on anyone. Please reach out to someone, even if it's just for a conversation. You just need to talk, and that person will hopefully be able to guide you in the right direction, pray for you, and get you the help that you need. It might take a long time, might take months, might take years, but it is better than you going down that path and taking your own life. Especially, it ruins everyone around you, and you are so much more loved than you know, even when you don't think it. So please, 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 just reach out to whoever you need.
Maddie, thank you so much for being here. And I'm going to end with I might butcher it, but let's rock and roll Hoochie Coo.
Yeah, girl. Love it.
Love it.
Best life.
Let's get real.